Hi BookTube. Today I will be doing my review of Through Darkest Europe by Harry Turtledove. This is an alternate history novel published in 2018, and I've seen a few reviews of it on YouTube, but not that many. And I read it, and I'm glad that I did read it, because it was one of the books I wanted to read the most on my wish list. But I'm going to give you ahead of time. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give this book a 6 out of 10, and I'll tell you why shortly. It's okay. So the premise of this, the setting of this alternate history is, what if the Middle East and North Africa and Europe switch places? Not geographically, but in terms of socio-economically. So the Middle East becomes the hub of becomes the champion of modernity, of modern technology, of advancement of human rights, whereas Europe is a hotbed of poverty and religious fundamentalism. That's basically it with the setting. The point of historic departure is in the 11th and 12th centuries, where one Christian philosopher and one Muslim philosopher switch places in how they send out their message. In the real world, there's this person called Thomas Aquinas, who said that faith and reason are reconcilable. Faith and science and reasoning can be reconciled. Whereas this Muslim scholar, Al-Ghazali, said they are irreconcilable, so you just should rely on faith alone to get to heaven in the next life. The hereafter is what's most important. But in this world, they switch places. I am not a historian. I am not a philosopher. I am not an expert on theology and religion, so I'm not going to even comment on that. But the resulting world from those two theologians switching places in terms of their messaging creates a fascinating world. So I wanted to read about it. At first I thought this book was, the problem with this book is not that it was badly written. Reading it, it's okay. It just fulfills the job of entertainment. So I was mildly interested. I wanted to see what happens next. But the story itself was very mediocre. The characters were cardboard cutouts. But there were a few things that kept me interested. There were a few philosophical musings that I could chew on here. One of the characters, I'll get to him in a moment, was the comic relief in the story. So his sharp wit, we're talking Tyrion Lannister level wit, was amusing. And the world itself, the world that Through Darkest Europe shows, was a fascinating world to explore. I'm going to turn on the fan there because it is roasting in here. Anyways, where was I? Yes. So the story itself is two government agents from a country in North Africa called the Maghreb, which constitutes parts of Tunisia, Algeria, and Libya, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a modern, advanced Muslim country. Go to poverty-stricken Italy. These two government agents, Khalid and Daoud, they fly over to Italy to become temporary security advisors to the Grand Duke, who is the monarchical dictator of Italy. So they go there and give advice to him on how to fight this incoming threat called the Aquanists, which in our real world equivalent is ISIL, Al-Qaeda, Wahhabi and Salafist fundamentalist groups. That's the real world equivalent to the Aquanists in this book. And the Aquanists want to turn back the clock on progress and make everyone in the world be their brand of Christian fundamentalism. And the mostly secular government and reformist government of Italy, but still authoritarian, are fighting back. And they're sent there as security advisors. Sorry, I repeat myself. And that's basically all that you ought to know. Khalid and Dawood are, all of the characters in fact, are cardboard cutouts. They have almost no personality. They do what they have to do. The story itself, the plot itself, is just these two, Khalid and Dawood, going around talking to various people. But very soon, as the saying goes, shit hits the fan. There's a fan there. Shit hits the fan. Violence, the bombs start blowing up. The fighting breaks out all over Italy. And Khalid and Dawood join the Italian armed forces in fighting this terrorist cult called the Aquanists. And they also give advice and protect the Pope as well. The impoverished Pope. Now, the first half of the book, like I said, it's just them talking to people. And in the second half, they start taking proactive action. Doing the Game of Thrones kind of thing, if you know what I mean. Like, they know who to talk to, they know how to convince people to make the right decisions, how to win the population over so that the regular common Italians don't join the extremists. How to win over hearts and minds. Only in the second half of the book do they actually take proactive action. In the first half and throughout a lot of the second half as well, most of the book is just them shrugging their shoulders saying, we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know. So it's not so much that that's part of their personality that's the problem. It's that they have a lack of creativity. It's that they have a lack of personality. Dawood, on the other hand, he's a little bit more interesting. His wit, his sharp wit, and he's Jewish, by the way. His wit is Khalid is Muslim, Dawood is Jewish. Dawood, on the other hand, has a sharp wit and his sense of humor always shines. He's always saying something sarcastic. And so that was humorous. That also kept me going reading this book. But otherwise, as a political thriller, I would suggest you should skip this book. Yeah. So, now, throughout reading it, I thought it was what the book was lacking in, that like compelling characters, interesting plot, and on top of that, there's one major thing this book does not address. Fighting over resources like water. That is one core cause of a lot of conflict in the Middle East today. Or the results of colonialism. In this novel, people wear robes, flowing robes and keffiyehs. Everyone dresses like an Arab. Everyone dresses like an Arab in the business world, and that's the formal business attire in this world. And everyone speaks classical Arabic as the bridge language, as opposed to English. So I imagine with everyone doing that, even the Christians, I imagine that Europe was once colonized by Islamic empires, and then they decolonized. but they did not convert the local population. Everyone remained devoutly Christian. So they didn't address the results of colonialism, like when they do redraw the lines and the colonialists drawing divisions between various groups. They didn't address something like that, which is the real problem for various parts of the world where there is poverty and violence. So Harry Turtledove missed out on a very important ingredient on why the Middle East is the way it is. Meddling interference from the West, so to speak. So this has it turned on its head. There were a few musings about women's rights that I found interesting, and as I was reading it, and said, yeah, that reminds me a lot of Saudi Arabia. Yeah, that reminds me a lot of Iraq, and that reminds me a lot of Yemen, and Syria especially. So, like I said, it was a fascinating world to explore, having those elements from the Middle East in Europe. And the story takes place mostly in Italy, but the foreign elements, but the religious fundamentalists from the rest of Europe enter Italy. Now, if I didn't say it before, I'm going to give this book a 6 out of 10. So, at first I thought it was, I was going to say earlier, at first I thought it was the lack of world building and the lack of compelling plot and personalities that I found most problematic with this book. But nearing the end, you can see that Harry Turtledove was in a rush to finish it. I noticed increasingly a lot of typos in there. For example, there was there was like one back and forth conversation, but it seemed to be one person just talking to himself and one person answering his own questions. They should have switched Dawood with Khalid. At first I thought it was a conversation between two people, but no, it was just one long chain of thought of one person. When I knew it was supposed to be between two people, the conversation, there were a lot of minor typos, him, they, it. There were these really minor typos. Harry Turtledove, get a frickin' editor, okay? Get an editor, or your editor is worth shit. But I can clearly see that Harry Turtledove was in a hurry to get this book published. That's my theory anyway. And at the end, he had a lot of hastily thrown in details that he could have put in later. That he could have put in earlier. So it was like quickly brought together. Oh, and one other thing. The Maghreb, which is the country that Khalid and Dawood come from North Africa, he couldn't decide if it was a republic or a monarchy. He called it the Republican Sultanate. And I was like confused. Do you have a president or do you have a sultan? Do you have a non-royal head of state, or do you have a royal? The country that he was describing was having an identity crisis, and I thought that was just sloppy. So, but the world itself was interesting to explore. I'm glad that I scratched my curiosity itch. And Dawood, the comic relief character, kept me amused throughout reading this book. So I'm glad I read this book, 6 out of 10. But it was mostly of what the book was lacking, combined with a little bit of sloppy writing near the end. All right. Sorry if this review was all over the place, but this is my third take. I'm trying to be as concise as possible and not ramble as much. Thanks for listening in.